welcome to another episode of Unsourced Wall. My name is Elvis Dutan, and as always, I am your host. This is going to be a bit of a light episode, not much to talk about, but hey, happy Cinco de Mayo, and hopefully that will, coalesce. But first things first, let's get on into some movie news. First off, we have some casting news for Suicide Squad 2, which is kind of insanely ridiculous and unexpected, and that's that David Dastmalchian, who played the Joker's henchman in both The Dark Knight and Season 4 of Gotham, has been cast in Suicide Squad 2 as Polka Dot Man. People are scoffing at this and mocking it, a mutual of mine pretty much saying that they're only going to watch this on a camera because they find it too silly, but we already have Captain Boomerang, and that's not a way to knock Boomerang at all or downplay him. It's just that it actually gives me hope by having these two characters that Gunn will at least attempt to portray the uniqueness of them on screen, which was drastically underplayed in the original movie. He only threw a boomerang once, and then the rest was remote controlled, and that was lame as hell. So I think maybe having another character that is as silly will be able to balance it out. Maybe you can just really go for it, and I hope it goes for it. I hope they have a fight scene together. I mean, that would be awesome. So fingers crossed. I hope it turns out great. And the only other thing we really have in movie news that I think is interesting is that we have what is apparently Endgame fans waging war against the very idea of Avatar being the largest grossing movie, which is kind of ridiculous because it's already been such a resounding success, but apparently they feel slighted personally that it isn't the largest grossing movie of all time and that Avatar is, because Avatar left no cultural footprint, which I guess is a point. I think people have been saying that for years, and I would agree with regards to movies that weren't successes, but when you have a movie that has made $1.2 billion in the first weekend, I think that argument becomes really petty, and especially when you have a movie that isn't as good as Avatar. And I'll just say this, I don't like the theatrical cut of Avatar either. I think it's a really boring, messy, and dull movie. But the longest cut, the special collector's edition cut, I think, was actually pretty dang decent. It has some really moving and engaging character beats and arcs, and it feels a lot more filled out and actually sustainable. So yeah, I think that it is better than Endgame, and if we're talking about the two movies compared to each other, then I hope that Avatar ends up on top. I really do. But seriously, this whole cult around Endgame has led to some really odd discourse, including the fact that I've heard the word bladder more times in the past 3 months than in my entire life. But this is just so lame, he really is. Next up, we have some TV news, first of which is that Amy Pascal, one of the leading voices in Sony's Marvel properties, has left the company to join Universal, and many rejoiced. But it's been stated that she will still be handling the Spider-Man TV spin-offs anyway, and I guess cool. I mean, Sony has been such a roller coaster of a production company at this point, especially with Marvel stuff, that it's kind of hard to understand what's meant to be a good decision or not. Whether or not she stays or goes, I have no idea if that's actually beneficial to the company or the properties as a whole, because there's arguments for both. But hey, since she's at Universal, if this means that we can finally get a Hulk 2, then I'm all for it. Speaking of TV shows though, Hulu has ordered 2 more Marvel shows for their lineup. This time a Ghost Rider series and a Hellstrom series. I wish them well. I hope that when we do hear more about them, that it's at least not as terrible as the cartoon sounded. And while I've never seen Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., apparently they're keeping the same actor from the Ghost Rider appearances on that show, and apparently he did a good job, so I hope that was a good decision. But anyway, fingers crossed. I mean, more power to them. Now, lastly, in comic news, in perhaps a really strange occurrence, was that one of the Milestone founders, Michael Davis, had his social media hacked, and this led to a widespread hoax that he had died by means of suicide, which was a real shock to pretty much all corners of comicsdom. It was honestly quite depressing, and there's this huge outcry of sorrow from everywhere about his passing. It was rather affirming of his place and time and really his position and standing among so many other comic luminaries. But then he just became this really awfully jarring position when it turned out that he was okay. And well, I want to say that it's great that he's okay, but the fact that we have idiots who perpetrated this hoax with that kind of subject matter was just a real crap thing to do, and I hope they find whoever did it. Just terrible. So yeah, I'm glad that Michael Davis is okay, and hopefully will stay that way for years to come. Fingers crossed that they track whoever did that down. Anyway, let's move on to what I read this week. First off is Tom Taylor's Deceased, number 1. I don't know why I read this. I mean, I know why, but I didn't really expect for this issue to lose me as fast as it did. Thankfully, I wasn't planning on continuing this mini past the first issue. I just wanted to just give it kind of a taste test because it just grates on every angle imaginable. It's boring, it's overwrought, the narration does little to give this any personality or atmosphere. A really goofy premise that demands to be taken as seriously as it can be as a horror conceit, despite the fact that it's really just a less interesting version of what happened in Final Crisis. It's using a lot of blood and gore to try and hide the fact that it doesn't have any actual substance or engagement to it. It's uninteresting, and it's also just badly written because it's full of all these extremely irritating attempts to be clever and witty, which is a Tom Taylor trademark. I bet that he thought he was real top shit when he wrote Dark Side is, Dark Side was, as though it had any kind of meaning or tact to it. It was honestly just laughable. It's not as bad as Earth 2 got because, let's face it, every page was full of those in Earth 2, but it has little to offer to DC fans, zombie fans, or horror fans. It's just trite, tired, and cliche ridden. And I glazed over maybe 2 pages in. 2 thumbs down. Next up, we have the Year of the Villain one-shot, which was vaunted as being sold for 25 cents, and it's not even worth that. Anyway, because I'm a glutton for punishment, I decided to check it out too. It's pretty much nothing. It's just the most generic start to any Legion of Doom story you can imagine. In fact, I think this exact plot has been done before. I could swear it was. Just Lex giving away and funding other supervillains. I don't know. I think that Snyder must have ripped this off from somewhere. But I can't believe that Snyder himself has been writing Justice League for so long at this point, and that this is the culmination for a mega event. It just thinks it's more grandiose than it is, and that actually makes me worried for whatever comes next, because if something so damn standard is being played as this incredible jumping off point for a depthy storyline, then I shudder at how dull and overdone everything else is going to be. I heard the term Apex Lex bandied about, and it sent chills down my spine. Some of the tie-ins could be neat because the general sort of inciting incident of like, hey, now all of the villains have like $1 billion each could lead to some interesting stories, but the main core sounds just aggressively average. So yeah, 2 thumbs down. Moving ahead, we have The Dreaming number 9. I actually skipped the previous issue because I didn't care about Dream's love story 2-parter. The first half really bored me and I felt like bypassing the rest. I'll probably go back and give it another chance when this arc finishes, but as for now, this was actually a pretty decent issue, so I don't feel like I've missed anything at all. This issue does feel like one of the early issues of the series, however. It's a bit more chaotic and messy and not very honed or straightforward, at least not in terms of the engagement you're meant to be having for this issue. But what it does have is the same sense of cynical humor and adventure that does give these issues weight nonetheless. Plus some really entertaining character beats. I felt like the little nods that we get that were written and sort of carrying forward from the previous cliffhanger of the knowledge that this AI has infected the dreamscape really do work, and they feel very natural and earned, such as with Abel in particular, who gets so well-rounded and just feels so much more developed than we last saw him, but it's also played for just the most pathetic nature that he can get, and it's honestly kind of depressing. But I love it for that, I really do. I love that this series is able to pull that off. And this issue is not among the heights of this series, but it's a really good reminder of what this series has to offer, like the beautiful art by Bill Griseboli, vibrant dialogues and asides, and even a little bit of the rollicking momentum between the settings, if not the general arc of the story itself so far. I hope that this arc eventually finds the steadiness the previous arc was able to find, and I overall have no doubt that it will because it's shown that it can. Overall, 1 thumb up, 1 thumb middle, and I can't wait for more. Lastly, we have The Green Lantern number 7, which was just a lovely issue. There's nothing else to really say about it because it works as just this little finite pause in the storyline. It has this fantastical and charming quality to it that I haven't seen in a while, especially so honed and so confident about itself. It's breathy, it's quiet, and it's very calm about the story it's telling, which is all to its benefit. It gives the issue a very finely done and combed storybook quality, but also a little bit of a high adventure. It really sells the atmosphere it's trying to get. It's like the polar opposite of Deceased. This is trying to be a bit more of a fairy tale, and it nails it. It really does. It has this neutral button in the center of this intense series. There's heart, there's warmth, there's silliness, but also really knowing what to do to hit their marks when it comes to staking out all the threats. It feels emboldening, it feels overcharged and amped up, but also just very classical as well. And it's a pretty dang great balance from both creatives, Morrison and Lee and Sharp. They are all out on this one, and it's perfect. It's fantastic, and I think it really does have some amazing Hal Jordan moments. It's very classically heroic, and I love it. I really do. It's a beautiful issue. So yeah, 2 thumbs up. And so we head on into what I watched this week, and a couple reviews here. The first thing of which was iZombie, the season 5 premiere. I don't know the name of it, and I probably won't figure out. It's not really worth it, because this was such a boring episode. There's no two bones about it. I was worried about checking this out because of how bad the last season was, but at the very least, this premiere is not as bad as that was, but it is way more dull and weary. There's just no energy to it. It feels more like each beat has to happen because the story needs to work that way, not because of any creative spark, but just to fill in plugs and stops in the narrative. The episode's plot is barely in focus. The character beats, which used to be this show's forte, now seem to be at the whim of said seasonal structure and just lacks the freewheeling and raucous atmosphere the show used to have. It's just way too much by way of going through the motions. The attempts to be dramatic and to have a message and hard-hitting moments fall flat. The characters are less recognizable than they've ever been, and so they feel forced and rough in the transition. I'll probably keep checking in with the show, but I'll hold off on reviewing it until it shows that it can surprise me again, that it can actually be the show it used to be, because this was just tiresome. Everyone felt tired, the jokes didn't land, the humor did not land, the atmosphere felt non-existent. It was honestly really depressing to see a show that used to be so good fall so far. And next up we have Doom Patrol, episode 12, Cyborg Patrol. This was a perfectly balanced episode. We've had episodes that are heavy on a few characters, but find ways to give the other characters development and growth in their own subplots. And to its credit, it's been done spectacularly so far. This episode, however, finds a way to put the plot at the forefront and have the characters each feed into it almost equally. In a way, I think that this episode could count as the first actual team episode of the series. Everyone plays a part, has dynamics, and gets a time to shine. Negative Man gets the heavier themes, Jane and Robot Man are more comedic but with dramatic tinges, and Rita really gets to showcase her ability to be the voice of reason that actually helps to round out some of her character's missing edges. Cyborg gets the best bit though, as we finally get full on into his psychological arc, and it's some pretty harrowing stuff. It's horrific, but so gripping and maddening, and I love the way that the series and the showrunners and the writers were able to take how it's being influenced by the New 52 stuff and twist it in such a way that is a perfect red herring for anyone who's any familiar with the comics. It's such a beautifully played turn of events, and I love it. It was honestly very masterful. I didn't see it coming, and it shocked me. It's a powerful character arc. I can't believe that they were able to pull this off with Cyborg. And the idea that the character arc isn't even done yet and might not have even reached its apex is insane. The show is lovely. This episode is hilarious. It's depressing, charming, horrific, touching. It's a madman's grab bag, but it works. It finds a way to juggle all of that into one perfectly entertaining show that never has so many episodes that are complete lulls. This should be the baseline for every episode. Like, this is something that you can pull off week by week, and if they can do that, then bless it. It's been great. I've had so much fun here, and I can't wait for next week. There's only 3 more episodes left of this season, and it's kind of really shocking that it's gone by so far, but time flies when you're having fun. Next week we get Flex Mentalo, and he looks pretty decent. I can't wait to see what he can do. Fingers crossed that they get him right. 2 thumbs up. Anyway, it doesn't seem like there's any listener questions this week, which is fine by me. I've had kind of a rough week, and hopefully things will lighten up soon. And next week, I think, is finally where we reach the season 3 finale. I have no idea what we're gonna do for season 4. I've always wanted to add in a special thing for each new season. I think season 3 was definitely like the weird theme tune chirping at the beginning of episode season. So I have no idea what this is gonna be. I have no clue. If you have any suggestions, please comment them below, or find me on Twitter and give suggestions there. Thank you all for listening, and I want to say thank you to everyone out there who has given in questions, comments, and feedback. It's really appreciated. It makes the show actually run, and it's awesome. It's really, really humbling, and I'm so grateful. If you have any of your own questions, comments, or topics that you want to hear discussed on the show, please tweet at me on Twitter at THE_SNICKMAN. And I just want to give a shout out to the cover artist for this show. who has done amazing work, and she really checked them out at DOTEMCEE. Anyway, thank you all. Have a great Cinco de Mayo, and see you again next week. Have a good one.